You should be the host here.
We're laughing at you.
We're both Munster people, diehard Munster people, and we want them to do well.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
I'd like to think I know a lot. Welcome along to episode 18 of the Red 78 here on the Rugby channel. As always, I'm joined by the legend that is Niamh Briggs. You're very welcome again, Niamh. Glad to have you back on.
Thanks,
How was your week been?
Yeah, obviously
Busy.
quite busy. Yeah, look, it's obviously just been announced getting involved with Ireland. It's obviously a great opportunity. But yeah, look, it's been ridiculously busy the last few days. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be that way now for the next few months. But better to be busy than not, I suppose.
Well, it is Munster rugby news because you're a Munster rugby woman. And this is big news. You're taking the assistant coach's role with Ireland. Backs coach, which would you prefer to call it? Assistant coach or backs coach?
I think it's as much, to be honest. Yeah, look, it's pretty cool. I think Greg approached me before Christmas, and I'm obviously very new in my coaching journey, so a lot of thinking, because you want to make sure that you can't pass up an opportunity like that, but you also want to make sure that you're fully qualified for the role, that you're not going to be I think the best way to put it is that you've got something to offer. So yeah, look, I'm really excited. We had our first camp the weekend.
So what have you to offer?
Well, I just think I've obviously got playing experience at the highest level for a long time, and now that I'm coaching Bohs and Munster, I obviously know a lot of players that are on the ground. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be really important for us going forward.
For people who don't know, how long have you been coaching Bohs, and when did you retire?
I finished playing in 2018 after that bad injury, and then started coaching straight away with Fiona Hayes and Bohs. Then Fiona moved on last year to Ballincollig, so I took the head coaching job with Bohs, which is totally different than being an assistant or a backs coach, if I say that much. And then obviously got in with Munster as well. I had done a couple of years with underage with Fiona and Murray Kelly, and then came in with Matt Brown and Mike Story this year. Really enjoyed that as well, because you're learning so much all the time, and then obviously someone like in Costello comes into the academy manager and understands that his role has to, or probably wants to improve, Munster rugby in general, not just the academy system. So he's been brilliant support in all his coaches. So it's been a whirlwind kind of maybe 10 or 12 months in terms of learning and growing, developing. And then, yeah, Greg and Anthony rang, and obviously you don't want to pass it up, but you also want to make sure that you're right for the job too. Like, I wouldn't like to go in there and not have anything to offer. So it's incredibly exciting, because for me, I think, I've worked with Greg before as a player when he was coaching Ireland. And I think that he's incredibly energetic, enthusiastic in terms of his rugby knowledge is phenomenal. Obviously, he's got to where he is. He's come back from America. He's, head coach in Rugby United, New York, and also he's with the US Men's Eagles, and he's coached Barbarians. So he's had a lot of stuff on his repertoire. So to be able to go and learn off him is brilliant. But also his personality is really good too. So from that aspect, I think we'll work really well together. So yeah, it's exciting.
It would have been nice if you told me that I didn't have to read about this appointment. I thought we were a team here. Like,
if it's any consolation, my parents said the same. Look, I think it's really difficult to say something like that until you're definitely doing it. I think, that's got to be the way. And while I was busy in the background trying to, talk to people in terms of whether you'd be able for it or not, like other coaches, like say Kazi or Matt, then, I'm sorry. I actually am sorry. But if it's any consolation, I live with two players. I didn't tell them either.
How are you going to manage the schedule now? Because you're going to be assistant coach with Ireland, assistant coach with Munster, and head coach with UL Bohs. That's going to be a pretty busy schedule. How are you going to manage that?
Yeah, look, it's obviously difficult, and but the way the season in the women's game works is that they don't really overlap a huge amount. So with Bohs, the AIL finishes in 3 weeks' time, so on the 26th of February. There's cup games in March, but the Six Nation Prep, okay, we had a screening camp this weekend, but Six Nation Prep starts after the AIL. And then the Munster stuff doesn't start till the Irish stuff is finished. It just means that there's not much of a break in between, but I love it. So like, people would often say to me, you need to get a hobby. Well, this is my hobby. I love it. If I'm not coaching, I'm on laptop, or I'm watching rugby, or I'm talking to you about rugby, or anybody else who listens to me about rugby. So yeah, I like it is. It's going to be incredibly busy, but I'm also very aware that I've got my prep done right, and like, I'm obviously working full time as a guard as well. So it's just going to have to. I'll make it work, because they're both two things that I really want to be doing at the moment.
Okay. So there's obviously been a fair bit of negativity and issues between the RFU and the women's team. The disappointment of not qualifying for the World Cup. It's kind of, you're going from the frying pan into the fire, but you seem excited about it. So is this a positive kind of new step for this Irish team? Is there new girls come into the group? Do you see all that negativity being sorted out and being able to look forward to the Six Nations, which is probably 5 weeks away now, 4 or 5 weeks away for you?
Yeah, so our first game is 26th of March, and you're right. Look, I think the thing probably the most exciting thing about this was that it was such a blank canvas, because you're literally, it's almost like a new era in terms of and that's a lot to do with how women rugby works, in terms it's very cyclical. So after a World Cup campaign, you'll often find that a coaching group moves on, a huge amount of players move on. So you're almost kind of starting from scratch every 4 or 5 years. And look, obviously it's incredibly disappointing that the girls didn't make it to the World Cup this year, but also how exciting in terms of, okay, you've got a blank canvas of something that you can start from scratch and build towards. And the talent, like, oh my God, Quinny, I was buzzing coming down the car on Sunday, because there's a huge amount of young girls, 18, 19-year-olds that were in that camp that weekend, that absolutely blew me away. Like, I was just like couldn't understand, like, A, that they were so young, but also B, like, isn't it brilliant that we're now at a stage where we have 18, 19-year-old girls coming through, whereas when I started playing, everybody was in their 20s, because they all started when they went to college. So it's from that point of view, it's incredibly exciting, because you've got these young girls and they have no expectation in terms of, they've not been there before. So they're incredibly raw and they're incredibly excited, and they're just want to learn. And you blend that in with some of the experienced girls that were in this weekend, and it was just a lovely match, great buzz, really good environment. And yeah, look, I just think it's obviously going to be a difficult thing, because you're trying to get girls to go from 0 to 100 in terms of a club level to international stage within a very short space of time. But I think you've got to be very objective too, and understand that this is going to be a process. And while
that's what I was going to ask you is look, obviously it's a new challenge for you and the girls, and a new era, and hopefully all that negativity can be sorted out between the RFU and the women's team, and that people can get behind the team and support them. But is it aside from, and we will talk about this in the next few weeks, it's a bit of a daunting challenge then, France, England, they're at a different level. So what's the goal for the Six Nations, or is that too early to ask you yet, as regards having the group to get fully together? Because a lot of the girls wouldn't have been at the camp at the weekend. They're still in the UK playing matches. So what is the goal for the Six Nations? Is just try to win people back over, create a bit of confidence, rebuild?
I don't think it's about anybody else outside of the camp, to be honest. And like, you're right, it's not something we've spoken about yet. It's very early days. We just had Irish AIL players involved this weekend. 7 to come back into that. They're due to play AIL over the next 3 weekends. And this is the thing, it's brilliant to see them coming in after, we spoke earlier on about the structures of the AIL, and it's the top 4 teams that are playing each other week in, week out post-Christmas. So the actual levels of games, the intensity, the pace is so much better than anything we would have experienced on a consistent basis. So the next 3 weekends are going to be hugely exciting, because they're the best players in the country, probably, in terms of the top clubs. And then when we get in together as a group in March, I think that's when we decide what the focus is. But as a coach, you just want to see players improve, get better. You want them to enjoy the environment. You want them to thrive on the fact that they get to play for their country. And once you get those things right, you're definitely going in the right direction.
Okay, well, it's a little bit different this week in slagging you about Spurs. Good luck in the job.
I was about to start slagging you for that blue jumper, but we'll wait for that for another time.
Okay. I like it actually myself. So as
It's
long
lovely.
as I'm happy and comfortable. But look, we've got to move on. As always, we want people to get involved in the podcast, and you can tweet us at Rugby Channel 15, or else tweet Niamh or myself at our Twitter handles. Leave a comment, ask us a question, make an observation as to what's going on, ideally about Munster rugby, but that can be from club, women's, men's, all the way through, or even the Munster players involved in the Irish squad. We have some tweets that Munster obviously played Glasgow this weekend and on Friday night away in Glasgow, which would be quite difficult. So I put out a tweet asking people what their thoughts were on the game, who needs to put their hand up going forward. And of course, we did the podcast last week, and Malachi Fekito was announced after the podcast. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So what people's opinions on it. So I'm going to read out a couple, and we won't go in depth in them all, but we'll see if there's any comments on it. Adrian O'Donoghue, I think the Ireland fullback position could be improved. As good as he is, Yeager Keenan, I'm not convinced he's the best player in the country for that position. He was poor against Wales, and if Mike Haley can put a big performance in more this weekend and going forward, he can put himself into the conversation. Well, I'm a big fan of Yeager Keenan. I think Mike Haley has the ability. I think he's a great talent. He's aggressive, he's hard, and I think he's played well recently. So I think we need to see a consistent high level from Mike Haley, because look, Yeager Keenan, I think, has been flawless since he's gone in the Irish job, in the Irish fullback position. But look, I'm not sure what you think. If you want to comment on that.
I think Yeager Keenan is exceptional. I think his time at the sevens has, like, his catch pass, his positional sense is so good. Defensively, like, his tackle tech is brilliant. And so yeah, look, don't get me wrong, I'm huge Mike Haley advocate as well. I think he's had a really good season this year, and he's starting to probably, why he's starting to come to fruition, I think, is because Munster are starting to move the ball more. I think previously when we were in this kick battle with opposition teams, all he was doing was catching and kicking back. So we never really got to see much of him in terms of his ability to run, stay square, his ability to offload. So he does. He has it, and look, it makes a difference. Then Munster need to be in the conversation come the end of the season, and he needs to be consistent. And that's sometimes when players ahead of you and you're playing on a different provincial team, you need your team to be winning as well and be really contesting. But look, he's a very good player, Mike Haley, and I think he has the ability to play international rugby. Peter Desmond, it would be great to see some players who won't be involved in France get released back for this game if they're not in the extended panel, but we still have a team capable of winning. Healy at 10. I just on that point of players being released, I think we saw some Ulster players released last week, Mike Lowry, Balakoon, Timoney, and they had a really powerful win. And Balakoon scores 2 tries against Connacht on Friday night, so he had a big impact. Lowry played well. In an ideal world, that would be great, because I think we'll talk about it in a minute. Glasgow actually, even though they have a number of internationals, they have 10 or 11, they're not all going to be involved. And I think Glasgow, who beat Connacht a few weeks ago, were very, very strong and a very settled team. So it's going to be difficult. So the possibilities of players being released. On that though, to be fair, like, majority of the Munster players that are up there are always going to be on the bench. So they're always going to be involved in the match day. And also, like,
the ones who might be released back, there's 3 options. It's Dave Kilcoyne, Craig Casey, or Gavin Coombs. I think the rest of them are going to be involved.
But like, if you look at this, Killer and Craig Casey are covering 2 pivotal positions. They have to be a part of that travelling party, because if someone goes down and the captain's running the warm up, then they're there. So
and Gavin Coombs warmed up last week, so it might be bad news for Peter. It'd be nice if Peter Desmond, It'd be nice if they could get them back. But then Ireland train Thursday, so they wouldn't be released till Thursday. They'd probably be flying out Friday morning. So I'm not sure it's going to happen. Like to see this is from Jerry Maloney. Like to see Casey and Healy at halfbacks, Crowley at 12, or Decky in the back row. But we just mentioned the Casey thing. It probably won't happen. It'd be lovely to see him, and I think he'd be great to have Craig Casey back. Crowley at 12 is an interesting one we spoke about, and a few people are starting to talk about that, because I think Ben Healy obviously played really well against Wasps, and that 10 position is starting to become really competitive. Exactly what Munster and what the fans want and the coaches want. From Thomas King, Tom Ahern would love to see him get a run of games. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see Thomas Ahern this week. I'm a fan. We're both fans. He's from Waterford as well, so it's easy. You're obviously a fan just because he's from your county, but he picked up a quad stroke.
No, a hamstring injury. Yeah, it doesn't look like he probably won't be involved this week, I'd imagine. Didn't look good to see him the way he was running as well. So trying to run it off. Unfortunately for him, because this was a good time for him to get game time over the next few weeks when the international's away, but they've just got to try and rehab him right now and get him back.
Yeah, well, look, that's they're the kind of tweets, a couple of tweets we got. It is a difficult game. We'll talk about it in a minute. We'll just move on to the piece for Andy Farrell, because the Six Nations is on. We started this piece a couple of weeks ago. Are you watching Andy Farrell? And the idea was to pick out a Munster player that maybe did grab the attention or is capable of grabbing the attention of Andy Farrell. Munster had no game at the weekend. But in picking a player here, I'm picking a player who I think is capable of playing international rugby. I think he's capable of possibly going close to being on the plane to New Zealand if in the summer, if he plays and gets selected, and has a good finish to the season. He's only played 7 games this season, had a long-term injury. It's John Hodnett, number 7 for Munster. I think Munster sometimes choose to put Jack O'Donoghue there, Gavin Coombs, Peter O'Mahony. That's probably the perceived strongest back row, their first choice back row. But I just think John Hodnett, he's an exceptional player. He's been very, very unlucky with a long-term Achilles injury. He only came back for the Ospreys game in October, then played in the Wasps game where, in the Champions Cup, and has played a number of games since. 3 URC games, which is amazing. You think he's around a lot, and 4 Champions Cup games. So I think he's someone that really has the potential to go and play international rugby. He's incredibly powerful. I think he's a really good ball carrier as well, something that you don't normally associate with number 7s. It's really, their tackle technique, their ability to put pressure on the opposition 10, breakdown work. But I think Hodnett has an explosive power that is exceptional. We saw that with the first try, the Jack O'Donoghue's try away in Zebra, the line break he made, the way he could swat people off, and he's very, very quick. So I'm not sure what you think. What do you think his strengths or weaknesses are? Obviously, he's had those injuries and he's had taken time to work his way back. But I think this guy has serious potential to go on and play for Ireland in the near future.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think he's phenomenal. I think it's that 0 to 5, 10-meter burst that he has. He's got really good footwork, big, strong fend, and he's well able to pass and read the play. So, yeah, I think the weakness is the fact that we just haven't seen him consistently enough, week in, week out. But now we're after, seeing him for a chunk of time for the last few weeks, and I think the more games he plays, the better he's going to get. I'm also kind of quietly laughing to myself. We've 3 weeks of Andy Farrell. Are you watching? We've picked 3 back rowers. And then you flip that over and you think, who would you take out to put him in there? And that's the nature now of where Ireland are.
Well, I tell you, Niamh, I did a back row chart a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
For off the ball, and we were looking at back rowers and trying to, I was asked to pick 6, 7, and 8 and the depth chart and see who we could pick. And just on the number 7s, I was there. Who's going to start? Josh van der Flier. If Josh van der Flier doesn't play, who do they put 7? And then I went with Peter O'Mahony because Will Connors and Dan Levy, who were, Dan Levy unfortunately picked up another injury. Will Connors is now after picking up another injury. He's out for a number of weeks. He's been out long term as well, which is so unfortunate, and they're just very unlucky. And I can relate to that because at times in my career I just had these long-term injuries that really frustrate when you're getting back. You're getting in a good place, and it can be very frustrating, and it can set you right back. So I picked Josh van der Flier, Peter O'Mahony, Will Connors, and then I picked Conor Oliver as number 4. Because I was just trying to think who at the moment starts for Ireland and what's the depth chart in that number 7 position. And the bolters I put in, which were beside it, were Conor Oliver, Scott Penny, and John Hodnett. So when I look at this again, I just think if John Hodnett plays consistently well over this next period of time, if Josh van der Flier picked up an injury or he wasn't on the Irish team, who is the backup? Conor Oliver has played very well for Connacht this year, to be fair to him, and I think he'd be comfortable at playing at international level, and I think he's ready to get an opportunity as well. But I really believe John Hodnett has that ability to step in there as well. So what I'm trying to say, when I look at the depth chart, we've loads of 6s, we've loads of 8s, and at one stage, we probably had 4 unbelievable 7s when Van der Flier, Dan Levy, Will Connors, Scott Penny was coming through, showing promise as well. And he's still in the conversation, Scott Penny. But I just think John Hodnett, at the moment, is not actually a million miles away from being in an Irish squad and actually playing. And that's why I think he has the potential, maybe, if he has a really good second half of the season and builds on what we've seen already, that he could
jump a few.
He could easily push for a place on the plane to New Zealand for 3 tests. There's 3 tests in New Zealand. There's going to be 2 warm-up, 2 kind of midweek games as well. So it'll be a big squad that they'll bring. And I think John Hodnett has that ability and potential to step up. The problem he has is Johan van Graan and his selections in the Munster back row. He's an out-and-out 7, I think, with an ability to carry ball for you as well. He's a fetcher. He's incredibly tenacious, aggressive, and has that bit of dog about him that I really like. So I think that they're his big strengths. Who is he like? That's kind of one of the questions I want to ask about these players. I asked myself the question, I think, the first player that comes into my head is he's a more... This is with respect to this player. I played against Neil Back a number of times, and he was incredible for England, for Leicester. I think there's similarities, a more aggressive type of Neil Back to John Hodnett, which I hope is a compliment to him, because Neil Back was an incredible player. I just think he has that ability, and he has a little bit more in the tank as regards being a link player and a carrier of the ball. For you, who would you kind of...
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Off the top of my head, I think when I see him in space and when he runs, I think he's like a more mobile CJ Sander in the sense that he's ability to be able to be incredibly powerful off the floor. But then I look at him in terms of his tackle tech, his ability to carry close in. He gets very square like Van der Flier does. But yeah, I think now the way Andy Farrell is picking his squads, and you can see it with the likes of, the Connacht boys and the Ulster boys going like Mac Hansen and Balakoon, Lowry, Hume. He's picking players on form who are consistently playing. So you'd imagine that if, Hodnett consistently plays now for the next 3 or 4 months, in big games, plays well, that he then jumps that pecking order of, Dan Levy, Scott Penny, Will Connors, from the fact that he's, playing and they're not.
Well, I mean, the door is open there because Dan Levy, unfortunately, has another injury and Will Connors. I think he needs to nail down the spot at Munster, and that's maybe knocking at Johan's door and saying, I want to start, and playing so well that he can't leave him out. And then you have Gavin Coombs, Peter O'Mahony, and
Jack
O'Donoghue fighting for the 6 and 8 spot. But I just think as a link man, as a ball carrier, and as an explosive player, and as a chop tackler, he's an incredible chop tackler as well. So look, we're picking players here. Obviously, there's 9 guys in the Irish squad, Six Nations squad. We only have 2 starters, so it's hard to go in depth there. But I just think, so we picked Gavin Coombs, Jack O'Donoghue, and John Hodnett the last 3 weeks. But all 3 have that potential. Jack is a little bit older and has been capped. Gavin has been capped as well. But I just think John Hodnett is a real opportunity in the next period of time to go to a different level. So that's it. Andy Farrell, keep an eye out on John Hodnett. Paul O'Connell, I'm sure you're watching anyway. So if he plays well in the next while, and Friday night's a game. So let's talk about Friday night. So if John Hodnett plays against a Glasgow side and stands out and Munster win the game, you need, in these types of situations where you're trying to push yourself into an Irish squad, and I know this from experience, you need to stand out in these games, these hard games, difficult situations. And with respect to Zebra, this is a different challenge, isn't it, on Friday night away to Glasgow? And you've picked out a few things that you want to kind of mention and look ahead to that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Glasgow are having a really good season. I think you're right. They have 10 or 11 internationals, but what's left behind is still really good. Like Duncan Weir's, they're starting out half. Sure, he could be easily playing with Scotland in the Six Nations. I think he's does the basics incredibly well. I think I met Damien O'Donoghue, who used to be with Munster as an S&C coach. He's now at Glasgow recently, and he just had a buzz in there. It's unbelievable. They have a really good atmosphere. And, this is an opportunity now for Munster to be able to, they're 2 places behind Glasgow on the table, but with a game in hand, they have an ability now to be able to jump that back up. And it's on a 4G pitch as well, which, might not suit some teams, but Munster are training on that 4G and UL, that will suit them down to the ground. And you look at the likes of, you'd like to see a continuation of that Zebra game in terms of Shane Daly, Liam Coombs. I was really impressed with Calvin Nash, be it Ben Healy or Jack Crowley, because I just think it's going to be a week for you and a week for me, I think, at this point, because there's very little to separate them. You're looking for them to be able to move the ball around. But as you said, Glasgow have been going very, very well. They had a really good win against Connacht away in the last round. So it's going to be tough.
Someone like Simon Zebo needs to play probably and step up as well if he has aspirations of trying to push himself back into the Irish squad as well. I think he hasn't played very much rugby this year. So it's a kind of a big test. This is a kind of a big test, not just for the players who are trying to put their hands up to get on the Munster team, but someone like Zebo, Mike Haley, if they want to make an impression and push on and get in that summer tour, they've got to play well. Just looking at the Glasgow team that played a couple of weeks ago and beat Connacht pretty convincingly in the sports ground. Kyle Steyn, Rufus McLean, Jamie Batty, and Rory Darge. They were probably, Rory Darge didn't play, but it's going to be a very similar team that beat Connacht pretty convincingly. I think Kyle Steyn is in the Scottish squad, the outside centre. Rufus McLean, the winger, in the Scottish squad. Jamie Batty. Whether those guys are released back to Glasgow on Friday night, we don't know yet. But it's a very strong team. Jack Dempsey at number 8. Richie Gray in the second row, Ryan Wilson in the back row. He's been around a while and very experienced as well. Ollie Kebble in the front row. Fraser Brown, who's a lot of caps for Scotland. So this is a strong Glasgow side. How does this Munster team, who are probably a little bit inexperienced, had been under pressure, were sloppy at times against Zebra, did some very good stuff. How did they go over and I've played in these games, these Friday night games in Glasgow, where they'll see this now as a real opportunity to take a scalp of Munster. There's no love lost between the two sides. There's a fair rivalry there over the years. How did the Munster team cope with that kind of pressure and aggression on Friday night and try and eke out a result?
Yeah, so I wonder how long we continue to talk about inexperience, considering that a lot of these boys played against Wasps in a kind of a half a team kind of bit of internationals and a half a team of
what I mean,
what I'm saying is that they went
Glasgow. What I mean about Glasgow, if you look at some of their team, like Richie Gray's a seasoned international, Fraser Brown, Kebbell is an international, Jack Dempsey, Duncan Weir, as you said, George Horn. There's a lot of experience here
completely,
in Glasgow.
But what I'm saying is that they've if you're one of those players, they went away to Coventry and they won. They
went to the Scarlets
and won. And you have to have that kind of belief in yourself that, look, we've negotiated these two away trips and start, understanding that you're there because you're good enough as opposed to anything else. And I think for Munster this weekend, you're 100% right. I'd imagine that hot review after the December game, they were definitely sloppy at times in terms of the possession.
The breakdown was really good. We spoke about that. Under 3 seconds, 65% of their breakdowns were under 3 seconds. So are we giving them a pass this week, or are we saying, right, this team has to go and win in Glasgow Friday night if they're to take this next step forward?
You talk about expectation, though, Quinny. Like they've had lost a couple of games. Now, I know not a huge amount, okay, and I know that was a lot of blown out of proportion, but they've lost 2 or 3 games two games in the URC so far. You can't, the way that the format is, they've got to keep trying pushing themselves back up the table. This is a really good opportunity. They have a game in hand to Glasgow to be able to go up and compete with, I think, Glasgow or 2 places ahead of them. So, we've got to be able to have an expectation that we will go and win. And this block, they've had a week off last week. You'd like to think they come back really good and refreshed this week. But this block over the next few weeks are really important for this group to be able to push themselves back up the table, but also get consistency in performance. And here's the thing. If you're looking for consistency in performance and you're looking for selections that are consistent, so you give opportunities through a run of games. And, you'd like to see that the trust will be put into those players so that they'll get, that Ben Healy or Jack Rowley or John Hodnett or Liam Coombs, Shane Daly, these guys will get, the next 2, 3, 4 games together. And they know that they have, so irrelevant of the results, they know that they're going to, you know what I mean? So consistency in performance, that's a one big thing for me.
And consistency in the aggressive intensity that they can bring, because I can guarantee you this, before anything happens here on Friday night, Glasgow will try and intimidate, overpower them, be in their faces. So I know some of these players will know this and they've been there before, but I think they've got to be really ready for an aggressive, intense game. And I think if they get that part right, the attitude and the aggression right, well then, of course there'll be a few mistakes and they're not going to be perfect. I think they're in with a great chance. And that starts up front against a very experienced, powerful Glasgow pack. So let's hope that they can bring that aggression and play a little bit, because as you said, it's a 4G pitch and they have a great opportunity to play some attacking rugby as well. We can't preview too much because we don't have teams and we're not really sure what the selections are going to be for both sides. It'd be nice, as I said at the start, if a few of them, a couple of Munster players were released back. It probably won't happen. They've got to prepare without them this week, but fingers crossed they get a big performance. And it's a tough game. No matter what they do, it's still a tough ask to go and get a win there. But I really hope, no matter what happens, that they bring an attitude, and we see some energy and aggression from them, and some glimpses and some glimmers of attack, improvement in attack, and them trying to play a little bit, because like I said, Glasgow will kind of try and overpower them on Friday night. So let's wait and see. And that we haven't a lot of time left. It was a great start for Ireland at the weekend. We'll briefly talk on Ireland here. We've only 2 players in the team, Andrew Conway, Tyke Byrne. I thought both of them played superb, as did the rest of the Irish team. There was chances left behind. I saw one team of the week, Six Nations team of the week, and I genuinely thought Tyke Byrne was in it. Andrew Conway wasn't, and I just thought he was superb again. Didn't have a lot to do for the second try, but the first one You know, he did brilliantly. Super. And I thought he was superb under the high ball, his kick chase as well. Just overall, briefly, very positive performance. Can they go to France this weekend and get a result?
Yeah, I thought it was hugely positive. I thought you're right. I thought Byrne was exceptional again. He's almost become that forward amongst Leinstermen that he is undroppable, really, because he's playing so well. I thought Conway was excellent again, and I couldn't understand in the build up to the game why people were, you know, and some pundits and media people, I don't know if they had to do it, but he wasn't in their team, considering that he'd had an exceptional November. And for that first try, Genie, like even the pickup off the pass on one knee was incredible, and the acceleration of Josh Adams is like ridiculously quick. To be able to have the step and the reach was just brilliant from him. And I think he's a really important part of this Irish team and how they play now. And so yeah, I thought O'Mahony, like, it's funny, isn't it? You talk about players coming off the bench, trying to slow things down and win you out the game when you're ahead, but he comes on, he brings to another level, like another poach, ridiculously strong in the contact, brilliant leader. And I thought Murray had a really good impact when he came on. He had 2 big half snipes, 2 little line breaks. The only probably blemish in relation to, you know, the Welsh try where Ty Byrne offloads, you can see Murray's calling for it and just looked a little bit rushed. But you can't really admonish them for that, because they're looking to play and they're looking to have that energy. And I actually thought it was really good. So it was brilliant. Hard to see how Gavin Coombs and Casey gets into that. And Joey got another, 20, 25 minutes, I think it was, 60 minutes came on. So brilliant for him as well. Great to see him back and doing so well. And so, yeah, look, tough game, France. But like, this is going to be I think this for me is championship decider between these 2 teams.
Yeah, it's a real test, this one, isn't it? Power, strength. France were a little bit rusty against Italy on Sunday, but it should be a humdinger. Hopefully it continues, because if they win on Sunday, I think they're in prime position. It's always going to be difficult, Niamh, isn't it, to go to Paris, even though I watched a clip back last night of 4 years ago. I was on commentary when Johnny Sexton got that winning drop goal. It's just, people should go back and look at it. It goes on forever. I don't know how many, I can't remember
21 phases.
It was 21. Phenomenal. It was phenomenal. Yeah. The way they worked their way up the field, the crossfield kick from Sexton, the Keith Earls, just the hard yards that all the forwards were making.
But they're playing different brands now, you know what I mean, Quinny? They're playing different style of rugby. And like, that was a really good win against Wales, but it wasn't perfect. I think I read the stat the other day that they had we picked 36% strike rate from inside 22. So that's an area now that you can completely hone in on. And that's brilliant if you're Andy Farrell, that you can go out and score a bonus point win over an international side, the defending champions, Six Nations. But to be able to walk in on Monday morning and say, we had 9 opportunities in the 22 and we only came away with points 3 times. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that's really good. That's good for them. Good for them.
Yeah, my only concern is the power. How can they deal with the physical size and pressure? But I'm confident. I'm confident they can go and win in Paris. More confident after the weekend. And some people are saying, well, the points were left behind and they should have got more scores and they should have beat Wales by more. Wales were missing a lot of players. I think it's a good thing, and you notice as a coach that there was chances left behind and there's things they've got to work on this week. But we talk about energy and aggression that Munster bring to Glasgow. Ireland have to bring certainly a huge amount of that as well. Okay, right. Before we wrap up, Niamh, we always try and see, is there any other news or gossip for Munster fans? Well, we missed last week that Malachi Fekitoa has signed on for 2 years with Munster. He's 29. He's 24 caps for the All Blacks. He played for Toulon when he left New Zealand and Wasps. Injured for a fair chunk of this season. But when I looked at his announcement last week, there was an awful lot of comments under the Munster Twitter page when they announced that Fekitoa had signed. And there was a lot of actually Wasp people who came on and said he's a huge loss. They're really disappointed he's going. He gives 100% when he plays and he's incredibly exciting. So what's your take on the signing?
Yeah, super exciting, isn't it? I think he's a classy player. also very interesting that he switches allegiance to Tonga and could most likely be playing Ireland in the World Cup in France in 2023. So yeah, look, I think it's like, obviously Delande going is a huge loss because I think he's been phenomenal for Munster. I think he's an unbelievably world-class centre, but what's coming in his place, something different, because he's obviously not as big and powerful, but somebody who can create magic out of nothing.
Well, he's 100 kilos. Delande is probably 105 or
yeah,
6.
but I'm talking about height, and you know what I mean. So, but he's got magic feet. You'd hope that that the injury problems are behind him, and so and that he can come and enjoy a really good successful period there.
Yeah, and whoever takes over as coaches, he certainly, if you want to build an attacking game, you have a different variety in footwork without him. One other rumor that we had was Ollie Yeager, the former Blackrock schoolboy who left Ireland when he was straight after his leaving, started 9 years ago, and he's playing with the Crusaders in recent years. He's done remarkably well for himself. A couple of times he's been linked to come back to Ireland, but small little rumor that, and this was just someone on Twitter sending me this, that he may be
definitely true then, Quinny.
Oh yeah, well, it's Twitter rumors now are sometimes.
Jesus, if that's the case, so it's a super signing. I watch Super Rugby are throwing out with it's called every week.
We won't big this one up because it is only a small rumor.
Very good work. If it's the case, it's good work to be sure.
Okay, and the last thing then is it's just been announced at 2:00 that Munster in their round 16 game, back-to-back games against Exeter. The first game is on the 9th of April at 5:30 in Exeter on Saturday. And the following Saturday then 3:00 in Thomond Park. So 2 good times for Munster in those round 16 games. They'll be pretty pleased with that. They've got to obviously go and perform there. It's going to be really tricky. So look, that's it for episode 18 of the Red 78. We'll be back next week. We'll look back at Glasgow and see who stood out. Did any of our Andy Farrell, are you watching players put their hands up for Ireland, or did we find any more? To make sure you get the podcast straight to your phone every week, just search for Red 78. And don't forget to get in touch. Send us a few tweets, your reactions, your comments at Rugby Channel 15, or search the Rugby Channel on YouTube and leave a comment, or else you can tweet Niamh or myself. That's it for this week. Thank you again, Niamh. And good luck in the new job as well. I'm sure all our listeners will wish you well and hope that the Ireland women's team has a good Six Nations.
Thanks a million, Quinn.
The Munster Rugby Podcast, Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster Rugby better.